this world of technology. So I say it again to you guys on Facebook. Hello, this is Sean from the place. Um, if you want to join us later in Zoom, that still is possible. Just go to the place, and there's a link in there. Maybe Irene wants to share it again in this live as well. Um, and I also do a recording of my daily podcast, Thrive Not Survive After a Child Abuse. So if you are following my podcast, you will hear the recording a little bit later on Facebook as well. Not on Facebook, on my podcast. And to start off with some good news, people on Facebook, but also um, here in Zoom. If you know anything about podcasting, and I'm not by no means I'm an expert, to be honest, but I started literally 61 days ago, and you have to and then some people, there are a different, like a radio station, right? There are different stations that kind of broadcast your podcast, so they publish a podcast, but the main ones are Spotify and Google and Apple, and you have to podcast consistently and also with kind of appropriate content. They're pretty loose on that side, to be honest. And then they allow you to be featured on their station, podcast stations as well. We don't call it stations, but I'm just using the old-fashioned terms. In a few years, no one knows anymore what a radio is anyhow. So, but the good news is that I'm also featured now on Apple. On Apple, it's already Spotify. It was already on the a few smaller podcast broadcasts, but it's now also on Apple, Google, and Spotify. So the three major ones have been reached, which is the first one. So I wanted to start with that, but that's definitely not the topic of today. The topic of today is actually coming from someone out of this group who asked me, are emotions, I rephrased it a little bit, but are emotions contagious, right? Is it like a disease that it is contagious? And I already gave in my post, I gave the answer away, because the answer is absolutely yes. It's seriously one of the bigger things that we need to manage in our society, because emotions are as contagious, and it's very appropriate actually question now that we are still in COVID-19. Is there is most people, we always get a little bit angry if people don't follow those rules, but more and more people start to follow these rules, is that when you talk about COVID-19, then you know actually that is contagious. So if you would have it, you would not go somewhere else. You would go in quarantine. It depends a little bit what country you're in. Some countries say 14 days. Some countries say 21 days. Some countries say only 10 days, right? So we have not a common understanding what the best length of quarantine is, but everyone knows, and let's pretend for today at least that everyone is following these rules. If you know that you have COVID, then you behave accordingly. So it's strangely enough, we actually don't do that at all when we have certain emotions. And that is mostly because people don't even know that emotions are actually, in fact, highly contagious. As soon as easy as you can get the flu from someone who has the flu, hence so can you catch someone emotions. Did anyone knew that, or now that I tell it, did you say, yeah, actually that's kind of that's kind of understood, that's a thing. I would know that now that I think about it, right? Yeah. So to know a little bit, if I say the flu, then everyone know, okay, that's something that's contagious, right? But if I have stomach ache, that doesn't have to be immediately contagious. Does that make sense? So we know from common sense, we know that certain illnesses and sicknesses are contagious. We had to learn that COVID-19 is highly contagious, and some things are simply not, right? If you have something very serious as cancer, cancer is not contagious, right? You can still shake someone's hand who has cancer and you won't get it. Does that make sense? Right? So we know that. The question here is, do we know all the emotions that are contagious? Now, I already tell you that all emotions are contagious, some a little bit more than others. But does anyone know how many emotions we actually have? So let me give a number. Just give a number to me.
10.
Huh? 10? 10. Anyone else? A number? You can put it in the chat if you want to put it in Facebook. You want to join the conversation there a little bit. You can put it there too. I will see if I can follow what's going on Facebook here. Yeah. No? 10?
Is Googling cheating?
Googling is cheating, of course. Yeah. Someone says 20. All right. Is that a guess or is that what you know? Right. Okay, that's it. So you guys take too long time for these kind of things. You just have to blur it out. You have to blur it out. If you think 10 is 10, every time when I work with a new coaching client, I always ask them, can you write down the numbers of emotions that you know? Very strangely enough, people come to not so far. If I mention them, then they say, "Oh yeah, of course, of course, of course, of course." Some people don't even know that that is maybe an emotion, but you have, let's say, the big categories. If you have emotions that are more seen as optimism or more seen as love, you have emotions that are seen a little bit more like when you're in awe, like "Ooh, I'm surprised," "Ooh, I'm very amazed," right? Or I'm a little bit distracted, right? So there are always scales in emotions, right? You have emotions of of let's say contempt, and so you could be a little bit annoyed today with from my beanie, but you can also be super angry because I have a beanie on, or maybe I don't know, maybe your cat was killed by someone who had a beanie on, and then you go in fully rage, right? So you have those kind of emotions. So if you depends a little bit what theory you follow, but you quickly go over more than 24 emotions, that emotional states that a person can have. Isn't that amazing? Did anyone know that you could have 24 emotional states? Um, it's a lot. And if I go a little bit deeper into that, is in the family that I grew up. We grew up in, and then I hope that my family who is listening, there are always a few people who are listening afterward, don't immediately be offended, but because I use these words as term from us to learn, a lot of people are brought up, specifically if you're from my generation, emotionally poor. We are brought up in very emotionally poor. We either were very happy and enthusiastic, or we could flip way to the other side, where we were angry and almost immediately rage. There was very little in between. And things like art, going to a museum, is very helpful, specifically for younger people, to show them all these different nuances in emotions that you can have. Dance is the same thing, right? I know Hans is a standard ballroom dancer. It's a little bit harder to facially express the emotions you have in standard dancing, but we talk about it a lot because I think it's possible. I think it needs to be done really well. But I know Danielle, she is more into the Latin dancing, right? She's this Latin dancer, and Latin dancers typically believe that they can express the emotions better. I must say they also default to just a few emotions, right? They don't know the whole spectrum of all the emotions that you possibly could have, right? So there's definitely a difference between feeling a little bit apprehensive and being fully in terror, right? So people who have that a little bit mixed up, they actually go very quickly from one state of emotion to the very deepest emotion. They are immediately in rage, or they immediately are terrified. Like if something happens to them, they immediately think like, oh, the whole world falls apart, right? And if you just teach them that there are different level of emotions that you can work yourself through, then maybe some things don't have to be immediately so fearful, but I just, just a little bit, you're just a little bit apprehended, right? That's okay. There is all these emotions, they have a function, right? If there would be a saber-tooth tiger still around, and you would meet that saber-tooth tiger in your backyard, you would not say, oh, I'm a little bit apprehended, there's a saber-tooth tiger in my backyard, right? You would like, oh my gosh, there's a saber-tooth tiger, let's jump over the fence. And that is, you run and fly away. That's a pretty cool reaction to have, right? So if I would, you know, um, use a hammer and a nail, and I hit my thumb with a hammer, then you would not say "oopsie daisy." That might be the moment that you say "holy f," because that's how it hurts, right? So every emotion it should be linked to an appropriate situation. Now, for the people online on Facebook and here with me on Zoom, you have to kind of figure out for yourself if you have that. If you constantly live in a state of fear and angst, and you're just really into that, deep emotions, something is off. And often we think we need to go to therapy, or we need to do all kind of difficult things. No, most of the time we just don't know the right emotions that fits in an appropriate way. So think about it just like this, right? If you fry an egg, right? And you put your egg on your sandwich, which is very Dutch, right? Have an open sandwich with a fried egg on it, sunny side up. I love that with a little piece of, I know Hans make them really well with ham and cheese under it, right? And you put a little bit salt. You would take a little, how do you call these things, Irene? Little salt dispensers, right? You would not take a spoon and put it right on there, right? But everyone knows, like, but that doesn't taste. But if it's the first time ever that you use salt, then maybe you don't know that. So it's the same thing when, I like to drink tea and coffee. And my mom used to always put a little bit sugar in it. And I remember the first time that I was allowed to put sugar in my tea myself. And I put the sugar in there, and I kept stirring it, and the sugar was gone. So I thought that's not good. So I kept putting more sugar in there, and then I tasted it. I was like, oh, that's not good. And in my family, you did it yourself, you finish it. Right? So I was like, there was so much sugar, that's not good. So you don't know the right quantity of things. Does that make sense? Is that a good example? So if you are a person that is in that state, and it could be too positive too, right? I mean, if you see some people on the street and they constantly like, whole idea, you think, maybe it's a little bit off, something with off it. But if you feel, which happens often enough and more in society, it's one of the reasons why I believe I have to do this work, is people are in a constant state of terror and a constant state of fear. Sometimes there's a constant feeling of grief. Sometimes in politics, there's this constant state of loading to another party. There's nothing good that they can say, because I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. And if you're a Democrat, there's nothing that I can see good in you, right? They have in that constant state. There are also people that you come across, and, specifically if you go to the cheaper supermarkets like Walmart, that are a constant state of anger and rage. Seriously, true. You don't have to do anything. You just do just a small thing, a little bit. You look at them slightly different, and immediately there is the, okay, then you could be annoyed if someone looks at you too long, but that's not ever a reason to be in rage, right? Think about rage road, right? So if a girl looks at me, I might have some sort of a feel of joy. I mean, I'm just hypothetically, because typically girls don't look at me. But if I would be immediately in ecstasy, oh, that girl that looks at me, look, she must be in love with me. Let's get married. That would be really weird, right? Does that make sense? So if you think about it for a moment, that happens a lot, right? That just being off the chart. And I have a nice chart of those emotions. If you want to have it, then I have that too. I will also make, by the way, after this, I was actually trying to make it before this, but I have a nice quiz that you can take where you can see if you're a little bit off the chart. So it's like 10 questions, 10, 12 questions, I believe. And then you know if you're a little bit off the chart. But let's go back to what the original question was. Is emotions then contagious? Yes. Emotions very contagious. If I smile to you guys and you look at me, come on, look at me. Come on, look at me. I mean, I see you working, secretly. Aida, you still believe that multitasking is a thing. Multitasking is not a thing, right? You either are with me or you either not with me, right? So, but I say it with a smile so you can accept it. But if I would say it slightly different, say, hey, Aida, if you do that the next time, I rather have you not calling in because I don't like that. You get a different emotion. Did you feel that? I can transfer, even that I'm playing it, I can transfer the emotion that I have, right? Now, I have an over friendly face. So people typically laugh at me, which seriously true. People always laugh at me. But there are moments that I have a migraine and I look a little bit more grumpy. And you think, oh, why are people always so grumpy to me? Guess what? Put on a smiley face yourself first before you say that. It is absolutely true. I can guarantee you, you walk through life with a bigger smile on your face, you will meet more nice people in your life. It is 100%. It's proven so often. And I understand why people don't get that. Why people some say, oh, I always meet grumpy people. I used to be a manager of a pretty big call center. Well, pretty big. I mean, it was big for that time. Call centers were not um, that popular at that time. But we had sometimes people on the in my team, and they said, "Yeah, I don't understand. I always get angry people on the phone." I said, "Well, that is because we have this super smart computer, and if the computer detects it's an angry customer, we reroute it immediately to you. All the other nice customers, they go to the other person." And they said, "Really? You can do that?" I said, "Yeah, because it must be true because you always get the angry customers." And then they got it right. Oh, okay, okay, maybe it's a little bit me. Yeah, it's a huge difference whether you pick up the phone. Hello, this is Sean, can I help you? That's a huge difference than if your voice is a little bit higher, and you say there's a huge difference between that, right? I hope that's not too big of an epiphany for the people on the phone because we have been talking about this too long, for a long time. So that's it. So, but if you know that someone has the flu and he's sitting in a meeting room and you just hunts, you work corporate, you just want to go to a meeting room and you say, hey, someone has the flu in there. You think, I'm going in there. I'm sorry, right? If it's just a common cold, don't be a little bit a weirdo. But if it's something like that, there is something what we call an incubation time. So by the time that you find out that someone has the flu, you probably already, it already hit you. But let's pretend that that's a completely new restaurant and there is a sign on the outside of the restaurant, people with COVID are dining here. Would you go in there? No, you would not go in there, right? You would that would be dumb, right? So if there's not always a sign there, right? But if you know grumpy people are in here, would you go and have your breakfast there? No, you would not have your breakfast there either, right? But now you have to flip it around. If you have COVID, would you just go to a restaurant and pretend there is nothing? No, you wouldn't do that either, right? That's called responsibility. If your mood is not really nice, you also have a responsibility to not go and sit with other people. Does that make sense? That doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people because that seldomly happens, right? But if you talk about responsibility, and I'm always talking a little bit more about mental health and physical health, but if you talk about responsibility and you are in a state of fear, anger, rage, whatever you have, don't go and mingle with other people because you will affect other people. Does that make sense? There is actually a medical term for it, and it's called emotional contagion. It is really a thing. I'm not making this up, right? It's really a thing. And if you just think about it, if we want to be responsible people, we have to be also responsible with our emotions. And now, if you're constantly in that state of fear, rage, terror, what have you not, then of course you need to do something about it. Don't immediately go to a therapist and get a tablet. You know, you can actually get organic stuff, which means just do normal stuff to get out of that funk. You really can. There is not always something wrong with you if you are in a in a state of rage. You just have to figure out, why am I so angry, or why am I so fearful, right? Is that the right emotion? Now, it could be off, right? So I have a little bit of a spider phobia. I do have that. Please, don't teach me, because I have enough, trauma of that. And so in school, when I went to school, I didn't want anyone to know that I have that fear of spiders. And I have at some point in time, that was and that was not manageable anymore. I just had too much of it. But of course, I grew up with three older brothers. So if they know that you have a fear of that, what do? They put spiders in your bed, right? That's how it is. Now I could live with that, because my oldest brothers, who would do those pranks, had a fear of spiders too. So he would never do that. But at school, you couldn't. That would not. I would not have a life. And we have spiders in the Netherlands, not too big. We don't have too many big spiders in the Netherlands. Well, some places we do, but I mean, compared to other countries, very little. But we have spiders with this little cross on the back, right? We call them cross spiders, but that's probably not the technical term. And they live on a web. And then we would take a branch from a tree or something, and then we would bend the branch. And if you do through those webs of the spider, you have a lot of webs at the end of the branch that you have bended, and then you could put a spider on it. I don't know what the fun of it is, but it was apparently very fun to run around the schoolyard and then, show to the girls those spiders. So I had to pretend that I did that too, just to tease the girls. Because if I wouldn't do with that game, everyone would know that I was afraid of a spider. So I would try to find the longest branch and the smallest spider. And then I tried to chase the most unpopular girls, because of course I wanted to be the girls, to be popular with the girls and stuff like that, right? So that's what I did. So I had to overcome little things to overcome my fear of phobia. And the biggest thing, when I overcame, well, I'm not sure if I completely overcame my fear of phobia, is when my little girl DS, she was in her crib, and there was a little spider, and it literally went down. Spider went don. So on her web, and without thinking, I took the spider away in my hand. That I said, "Here, you not go." And I was so proud of myself that I had this little itty bitty tiny spider, but I saved my girl. I saved my girl. So there you go, right? So everything is appropriate. It's a story to explain that to you. So if we want to be responsible, we need to do that, right? We need to just behave differently. But let's take it one step further, right? Weeks ago, I talked to you about that we are all leaders in life. Yeah. And leaders set good examples. Now, do you want to lead by motivation, or do you want to lead by fear? Right. And a lot of people lead nowadays by fear. If you look at politics in the US, there's one party that's constantly leading by fear. If you don't do this, if you don't vote for us, this is going to happen. When economy is going down and everything is going to the shit hit the fence. That's what we say here in the United States, right? Or do you lead with joy, or do you lead with resentment, right? Do you constantly talk about how bad the other people are, or do you find strength in yourself to do that? So there's a lot of responsibility in there as leaders, but also as human beings. And the only thing really you have to do, is really an important question, is how do I look? How do I lead my? If I go to work, do I have a happy face, even if I don't like my work? you know you could still be happy for your colleagues or the people that you serve. You, after all, took the job. Right? You, after all, got paid for the job. you better make sure that you have the right emotions for that job. Does that make sense? And it's not always easy, but the point is that life, we all want it to be easy, and it is not. We made our choices, so we have to be, no one ever asked me in a dance lesson truly. Okay, maybe Hans and Belinda, because they are my friends. But if you come to a dance lesson and you ask them, how are you? And they might give you 10 minutes of I don't know, of the misery in their life, what they had, and then they ask you, how are you? If I would also take 10 minutes, they probably would be very angry with me. So I have always have to, good, I had a good life. Yeah, perfect. A little bit of a headache, but nothing serious. Let's start with the dance lesson. Yes, please, we pay you. So let's start with the dance lesson. It's really true. So on one hand, it annoys me a little bit because are my students really interested in me? On the other hand, hey, I chose to give the dance lesson. I choose to be in front of the class. So last week, I hope there are not a lot of people from Studio 22 listening, but last week we had to take two classes over. We actually didn't feel it for it, but we could help out a friend, and that was the true emotions why we did it. And so, I had to really say, okay, this is my, at some point in time, it becomes a habit almost, right? You go in dance floods, it takes you a little while. You might have a headache, but I don't know what it is, Hans. You're a dance teacher too. At the moment your students come in, it's like you flip something. And you don't even, it doesn't even cost me any effort to have a good mood, to make my, well, they're funny jokes, but to make my jokes, to be motivational, because a lot of people come from a motivation. So it's absolutely a thing that you can learn. You don't have to run your life always with the emotions that you feel at that moment. It's what I'm saying all the time. There's a huge difference between how you feel and how you act outside. Is there time that you need to act the way you feel? Yeah, absolutely. If someone died in your family, I'm not saying you have to put up a mask and it's all happy and stuff like that. But here it comes, right? In some cultures, we want that. In a time of grief, we actually even hire people to take on a certain emotion so that the whole audience can feel how much we grieve. So they go a little bit maybe over the top, but if that's not so far off my culture, to be honest, my original culture. And then you hire people that actually cry for you and with you so that the emotion is built up, right? And the same happens, and they think, okay, that's weird. It's not so weird, because if you want to build a party, you put on music or you hire a band that actually lift up that emotion so that everyone can take on that emotion. So in these kind of things, we actually really understand it, but in normal life, there's not a lot of people who understand it or actually follow those rules. And if it comes to social media, it's even worse. We think that we can just share all our emotions because we feel like it. You have to be responsible because someone can catch your emotion. Does that make sense? A lot of people don't see that as a responsibility. They think, okay, I have a bad day. Maybe I should share with you guys that I had a bad day. Why? Why do you think I want to know that you had a bad day? That doesn't make any sense at all with me, right? So it makes a little bit more sense if you have positive things to share. And I don't want to make this world flower power positive thing, but we do better on positive things. That's just simply what it is. Specifically, men. I wish I could. I wish I could share the picture I had. Maybe I had to print it out. I can, but if you look in the way we look at the emotional states, then we have what we call the upper emotions and we have the lower emotions. So specifically for the men online, it's really nice. Men typically don't dare to go very deeply into the what we typically say the negative emotion. So if something bad's happened to men, so Hans is the only one here on Zoom, so I'm talking a little bit to Hans. Men typically have a everything. Oh yeah, everything is good, and they hoop and they floop. They go right back up to that upper emotion, and that means that they create something in themselves that stays a little bit in the more negative emotion, it grows in them. Women typically, they come together, say, okay, let's talk about my cat died, and we need to talk about it. So they share negative emotions, can stay a little bit longer in it, but have a tendency a little bit to stay longer in the negative emotions. Yeah, that's typically a little bit, if I do very stereotypical way of defining. So men typically want to stay only in the top. Women typically know the whole circle, but sometimes stay a little bit longer in the negative cycle. And that's why sometimes men and women, men coming from Mars and women from Venus, cannot always understand this, right? Because men can compartmentalize and say, okay, I know something bad happened to me, but I have to go do my meeting. Okay. Um, well, if you work with most dancers, that doesn't work, right? That doesn't always work because it takes a little bit longer, and that's okay. Those kind of differences, that's normal thing. You do that in private settings. You don't have to say that on social media. I really don't. Brilliant, brilliant, by the way, invented by Mr. Zuckerberg to have all these emoticons and stuff like that, because now we can share emotion and we can take on each other's emotions. And if it's big things like, I do that very seldom. There are only a few occasions in the year that I do it. I know it. And that is when my brother passed away. That was a really hard thing for me. I always passed a post about Stairway to Heaven because that was one of his favorite songs. And I just want to remember him. It's not to take on the emotions of grief because, to be honest, yeah, it's not that I'm crying the whole day every day because my brother passed away. Most of the time I didn't see him anyhow. So it's not like I can pretend that I miss him every day, but I don't, seriously, because when he was alive, he lived in the Netherlands. I didn't call him every day. It's not like oh my gosh, he was in my, no, he's just a brother that I grew up with. If I think about it and I hear some song, my triggers get, my emotions get triggered. But it's not that I mean, like, oh, let me share that on Facebook. My emotions just got triggered. You don't do that. Some people have the feeling to do that. But once a year I do that. And now if you feel that's also not appropriate, that's okay. You can let me know that. That's very appropriate to this discussion. So what is appropriate to share and not? We want to show that we are normal human beings too, right, on social media. And we do that a little bit more publicly than when I grew up, because there was not even a telephone when I grew up, seriously. I had to go to the neighbors and brought a dime, and then we could make a phone call there. But there was no one who to call, so I rather bought candy for the dime. But has nothing to do has nothing to do with the whole story. Anyhow, guys, that's it. That's it. That's about emotional contagion. So emotional is definitely contagious, and you have to be super careful with it, right? Just check yourself in the morning. Make a temperature how you are today. You can actually flip it much easier than you think. So I think I gave three important lessons. One is, do you know how your skills are of the emotions do you have? Do you go from happy to completely rage, or do you go from just being a little bit afraid, apprehended in English, to completely in terror? And do you live in fear and terror constantly? Is that the emotion that you have? If that's you, then you can let me know, because there's definitely something to do. But just knowing that there are different nuances, knowing that there are different spices to cook with, change your way of cooking tremendously. In the Netherlands, by the way, before a certain year, 1500, they didn't even know the existence of pepper. So they didn't use it. They only had salt. That's the only thing they used to spice up food. Over time, we start to learn how to spice up food. So you can spice up your emotions appropriate to what you want to do, right? Sometimes food needs to be super spicy. Other times it needs to be sweet. And another way, that's also with your emotions. But if you haven't happened to have a day with bad emotions, then make sure that you don't affect other people with it. It's a responsibility to you. Plus, if you see a group of people where they're always negative, and there was a time in a certain dance school where I used to go, and Danielle knows the dance school really well, where I felt that they constantly were talking about other people. And before you know, if you sit with them a little bit, you're actually going to do that too. That's the weirdest thing, even if you hate it. So the only thing you do is don't go there. Yeah, yeah, but I have my dance lessons there. What is more important for you, to have a healthy mental life or to do that? I hope that's not the case anymore, but there was a time that I just didn't want to go there. I was sitting at the bar and with coffee, and they thought, I'm sure a lot of people thought that I was a little bit antisocial or something. Typically don't do that. I'm not saying that I'm not gossip, because you sit in a group of people, you are going to do it the same thing too. If you tell you have a headache, oh, there's someone else who has a bigger headache than you. Those type of groups. That does that make sense? You can make choices. You live with a family member that's constant yelling at you. You know what really helps? Yelling back. No, that doesn't help. Yeah, that doesn't help, because you mimic the same negative emotion, and guess what happens? You go, it got everyone. I mean, I lived in a big family. I know exactly how to. That's not always easy, and sometimes it just escalates. That's what it is. Move on, clean the slate, and boom, you know, and do it again. Don't immediately run to a family therapist for these kind of things. Just use your common sense and study these things. All right. And then you have the responsibility and the leadership that you actually can go out there in the world and bring more smile to the world and more positive news. That's what it is. Not to be all happy flower power people, but just to do something good in the world. Does that make sense? Yeah. And dance teachers know that trait really well, strangely enough, because we know that we partly entertainers. Yeah. And I always take Hans as an example, because he and I were at least in the same line of work. The reason why I was successful in corporate is actually not because my story was good. I'm just a really damn good presenter, and people love it when I make jokes and I dare to say things directly. I look at them, right? I have this smile on my face, sincere. I didn't even have to practice. Sometimes I know my content is actually as crappy as my next speaker. Seriously true. But they remember it because I put effort in there. I know it. I just go 2 seconds right before I go on stage. I put myself in a certain emotional state. You can do that, right? You literally can do that. You don't have to be dragged down by the only feelings that you have. Seriously true. That is something that people so often forget. They think, oh, I feel bad. Everything has to be. My dad used to be like that. This last thing I say, he used to be super grumpy. At some point in time, I mean, when I was, when I'm I was strong enough to say it to him. I said, "Why did you stay in your bedroom with your grumpy face every morning? Holy cow! I mean, yeah, that's my character. We have a dark character. We have to be. Well, if you grew up in an Indonesian family like I do, you don't talk to your dad like that. But I got so sick and tired of him being grumpy all the time every morning." That I thought, oh, that's our character trait. We are grumpy. No, grumpiness is selfishness. Be alone in your grumpiness. Go sit in your room. That's what it is, right? That's what I started to say. Seriously true, right or not? Right? Okay. Anyhow, I went a little bit on a rant here. It's apparently a thing that is close to my heart. I didn't know that either. Any other people on Facebook? I hope you enjoyed it. Still, I probably post that. I mean, if Erin, you have to help me. Let me make a little link to that little quiz that I have. I have to make it. I have to automate it a little bit. Otherwise, I get 500 emails of people who want me to analyze that quiz. So I automated a little bit, and then you can make that quiz, and then you can calculate on how you score on these things. It's kind of fun to do, right? All right, you people on Facebook Live. If there's no questions, let me quickly look. If there are any questions, then I'll say to you bye bye, right? Um, I noticed also that the last couple of weeks I didn't have it on public. That's the reason why a lot of people couldn't see my Facebook Live. So sorry for that. And I had to post it afterwards and stuff like that. But everything should be fine right now. And I'll say bye bye Facebook Live, and I'll put you all on unmute on Zoom. And if you want to join, just jump in really quick. All right, you guys. I stopped the recording for my podcast. I hope to hear you tomorrow, by the way, on the podcast. And